$26.5 billion. In a single trading day, SK Hynix just raised the biggest foreign IPO in United States history, and almost nobody realized they'd reshaped the entire global chip supply chain. If you've ever plugged in a phone or opened a laptop, you've held SK Hynix chips in your hands. They make memory, the stuff that holds your data when the power's on. Think of it like your brain's short-term memory. Your phone can't think without it. Your computer can't run without it. Here's what's wild. This one South Korean company controls about 1/4 of the world's memory chip production. That means SK Hynix has its hands on the most critical part of every AI chip, every smartphone, every server running your data. But governments around the world are panicking, and not because of the money. They're panicking because SK Hynix is being told it must build factories in the United States instead of expanding at home in South Korea. That's a direct hit to how global manufacturing works. It's geopolitics dressed up as business news. And if SK Hynix complies, every other chip maker on Earth will be watching, because what happens next could force the entire industry to rebuild itself. Here's what just happened, and why it matters more than the number itself. SK Hynix isn't a household name, but it controls the memory inside your devices. Think about how a restaurant needs two things to run: fast servers and massive kitchens. Servers are like your processor, they decide what to make. Kitchens are like your memory, they hold all the ingredients and half-finished dishes. Without a giant kitchen, the fastest server means nothing. 3 companies own nearly all the world's memory production: Samsung, Micron, and SK Hynix. SK Hynix claims about 25% of the market. That's 1/4 of every gigabyte of RAM running through every AI data center on Earth right now. SK Hynix is based in South Korea, in a city called Icheon, about 40 minutes south of Seoul. For 3 decades, they've built their chips there and shipped them worldwide. They're huge, $56 billion in annual revenue, over 90,000 employees. But here's the problem. Taiwan and South Korea are the only 2 countries that can make cutting-edge memory chips at scale, and the United States government is terrified of depending on either of them. What if China invades Taiwan? What if geopolitics force South Korea to cut off American companies? So the United States passed the CHIPS Act and started throwing money at memory makers, saying, "Build here instead." SK Hynix listened. But the cost of a new fab is roughly $8 to $10 billion. One factory in America. That's where this IPO comes in. $26.5 billion is enormous, but what does it mean? A new semiconductor fab in Arizona costs $8 to $12 billion. You need land, construction, clean rooms cleaner than an operating room. The extreme ultraviolet lithography systems that carve transistors into silicon cost over $1 billion each. But building is just the start. After opening, you need money to run it. Maintenance, raw materials, thousands of engineers. A fab needs cash flow for years before turning profitable. The United States government covers part through the CHIPS Act, roughly $5 to $10 billion in subsidies and tax credits for SK Hynix. This IPO adds $26.5 billion from private investors. Suddenly you can build 2 fabs in Arizona instead of 1 and operate them for years. But here's the twist. Building in Arizona is slower and more expensive than South Korea. Power costs more. Talent is harder to find. Shipping from Arizona instead of selling from Seoul adds friction. SK Hynix is taking efficiency hits to serve United States security goals. That's expensive. And now every chip maker knows the United States will demand the same sacrifice. Samsung is watching. Micron is watching. Taiwan is paying attention. This isn't just about SK Hynix anymore. It's about forcing the entire industry to relocate production to America. Whether it makes financial sense or not. Your iPhone, MacBook, gaming PC, they all have SK Hynix memory chips inside. When you take 1,000 photos on vacation, that memory holds them. When you open 17 browser tabs and edit video, memory keeps your computer from freezing. Gaming PCs need mountains of memory to render modern graphics. A single game frame requires gigabytes just to hold textures and AI calculations. Graphics cards would sit useless without SK Hynix supplying those chips. Every AI model running right now, Claude, GPT-4, Gemini, depends on memory. Training a massive model requires terabytes of working memory. That's thousands of SK Hynix chips talking to each other inside data centers. When SK Hynix has problems, it ripples everywhere. In 2021, a global chip shortage hit Asia for a few weeks. Suddenly, PlayStation 5s couldn't be manufactured, car production lines shut down, people couldn't buy new phones. One memory maker stumbling affects your ability to buy a laptop. Now imagine if SK Hynix moves all new production to Arizona, which has never made chips at scale. Production could drop, prices could spike. Your next phone could jump from $800 to $1,000. That's why governments care about this IPO. That's why they are forcing SK Hynix to build American fabs. Memory chips touch everything you use, and whoever makes them controls the future of technology. SK Hynix isn't the first. This is a bigger trend showing why America is pushing so hard. 5 years ago, the United States depended on Taiwan and South Korea for nearly all advanced semiconductors. 92% of cutting-edge chips came from those two countries. America made almost nothing. Then the pandemic hit. Supply chains broke. Taiwan got affected. Chip shortages erupted everywhere. Car makers stopped production. PlayStation 5s vanished. Electronics prices jumped 20 to 30%. America realized we are vulnerable. If one virus breaks the supply chain, what if China invades Taiwan? What if an earthquake destroys a fab? The government decided never again bring manufacturing home. The CHIPS Act wasn't just money, it was control. The bill said, build in America and we'll pay, build elsewhere and we won't. Samsung got subsidies, Intel got funding. SK Hynix gets this IPO boost, but with strings attached. Here's the comparison. Before, SK Hynix chose where to build based on business sense. South Korea had cheaper labor, better infrastructure, existing factories. Now the United States government pays SK Hynix to make a worse business decision for American national security. Every chip maker faces the same choice: build efficiently or build where governments demand and offer subsidies. The entire global semiconductor industry is decentralizing. That costs money, slows innovation, and raises chip prices. But from Washington's view, it's worth it. Chip independence is national security. This IPO begins a much larger game. SK Hynix builds in Arizona, then every chip maker faces pressure to do the same. Samsung's already building in Texas. Intel's expanding in America. TSMC is also moving to Arizona. The threat is clear. Chip makers that don't build in America lose access to American markets. This already happened with China. United States restrictions cut off the most advanced chips from Beijing. Europe could be next, build here or lose our markets. We're heading toward a world where every region demands its own chip production. America wants Arizona fabs. Europe wants European fabs. India might demand the same. You're no longer making chips where it's most efficient. You're building in a dozen locations, each with different costs and regulations. That's expensive for SK Hynix and consumers. Chips cost more, but countries gain chip independence. If Taiwan breaks from China or a trade war erupts, America won't be helpless. This IPO is the first domino. If SK Hynix succeeds in Arizona, Samsung doubles down in Texas. TSMC expands. Apple might design its own chips domestically. Over a decade, global tech manufacturing transforms completely. Production spreads everywhere. Costs rise. Innovation slows. But the most powerful nations secure their chip supply. That's the long game. Understanding where this goes requires knowing how chip making works. A cutting-edge fab is part hospital, part factory. Entire sections are hermetically sealed clean rooms, air filtration so good that no dust particle larger than 5 nanometers exists. A human hair is 70,000 nanometers wide. Machines chase things 10,000 times smaller. Equipment comes from Europe and Japan. ASML makes extreme ultraviolet lithography machines that cost $100 million each. One fab needs 20 of them, $2 billion in machines alone. SK Hynix doesn't just arrive in Arizona and turn it on. They hire thousands of engineers who have never made chips. They import expertise from South Korea. They build relationships with equipment suppliers, material vendors, quality specialists. This takes years. Samsung built an Austin fab over 5 years. It's still ramping up now. Intel's been building in Arizona for 2 years and isn't at full capacity. These are decade-long projects. When the United States government paid SK Hynix to build domestically, they created a commitment costing far more than the initial estimate. This isn't a quick cash grab. It's binding SK Hynix to America for the next 10 years. By 2036, Arizona will have multiple major fabs running. Taiwan's chip dominance breaks. That's Washington's real goal. Not just this IPO, the entire reshaping of global chip manufacturing. $26.5 billion, one IPO. But this is really about geopolitics reshaping the world. SK Hynix's decision to build in Arizona tips the first domino. Samsung follows, TSMC follows, Intel expands. By 2036, chip manufacturing spreads across Arizona, Texas, Germany, Taiwan, South Korea, no longer concentrated in 2 countries. For SK Hynix shareholders, it's mixed. IPO raises money, but forces the company into slower, less profitable operations. For consumers, it's worse. Chips cost more for years while new fabs ramp up. For the United States government, it's strategic victory. Chip independence is national security. If war comes with China, if Taiwan gets attacked, if another pandemic hits, America won't depend on foreign suppliers. America will have its own production running. This isn't venture capital chasing returns. It's geopolitics dressed as business. Governments betting trillions on the future, willing to make chips more expensive for everyone. Watch for Samsung next. Watch for Intel expanding. Watch for announcements from other companies building fabs in America, Arizona, Texas, Ohio, everywhere the United States government wants them built. Every announcement is part of the same long-term strategy. The age of global chip manufacturing ends. Regional chip fortresses begin. And it started with this single IPO from SK Hynix. Remember this moment. It's the beginning of how the world rebuilds itself.